He went to bed like he had done thousands of nights before. No warning, no dramatic chest-clutching moment, no final words, just sleep. And by morning, he was gone. The most terrifying part, he didn't think he was doing anything dangerous. It wasn't skydiving. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't some extreme stunt. It was something millions of people do every single night without a second thought, something that feels normal, comfortable, routine, something you might even be planning to do tonight. Doctors later said the cause was a massive heart attack that struck while he slept. Others have died from severe strokes triggered in the same quiet hours of the night. No struggle loud enough to wake the house, no time to dial emergency services, just a silent cardiovascular collapse while the body was supposed to be resting. Here's what makes this so unsettling. Nighttime is when your heart is most vulnerable if certain conditions are in place. Your blood pressure shifts, your heart rhythm changes, oxygen levels fluctuate. If you combine that with one specific common habit, the strain on your cardiovascular system can spike without you feeling it. You fall asleep believing you're safe, while internally your body is under pressure. Many victims had no idea they were at risk. They weren't diagnosed with advanced heart disease. They weren't bedridden. Some were active, social, and seemingly fine. But hidden factors, elevated blood pressure, mild artery narrowing, stress, dehydration, heavy meals, alcohol, quietly stacked up. And then one night, the tipping point came. Cardiologists warn that the heart does not always give you a dramatic warning sign beforehand. Sometimes the first symptom is the last event. A clot forms, an artery blocks, the rhythm spirals out of control. During the day, you might feel dizziness or crushing chest pain and seek help. At night, you're unconscious, there's no reaction time. This isn't meant to scare you for the sake of fear. It's meant to wake you up before you go to sleep. Because what feels harmless could be placing unnecessary stress on the one organ that never stops working for you. And once you understand how this common behavior affects your heart, you may never look at your nightly routine the same way again. One of the most underestimated triggers of sudden cardiac events during sleep is a seemingly harmless nighttime habit that millions of people repeat without thinking. It often begins with exhaustion, stress, or discomfort, something that feels minor at the time. Many individuals go to bed immediately after a heavy meal, intense emotional stress, alcohol consumption, or prolonged screen exposure. What they don't realize is that these behaviors dramatically increase the workload on the heart at the exact moment the body is supposed to slow down and recover. When you lie down after overeating, for example, blood flow shifts toward digestion. The heart must pump harder to manage both circulation and metabolic processing. If arteries are already narrowed or blood pressure is elevated, that extra strain can become dangerous. Nighttime is also when hidden cardiovascular vulnerabilities tend to surface. During deep sleep, heart rate and blood pressure naturally fluctuate. For someone with undiagnosed hypertension, arrhythmia, or arterial plaque buildup, these fluctuations can trigger irregular heart rhythms or reduced oxygen flow to the brain. Alcohol makes this worse. While many believe it helps them sleep, alcohol actually disrupts the autonomic nervous system, increases heart rate variability, and can provoke abnormal electrical activity in the heart. Combined with dehydration, thickened blood, and lowered oxygen levels, the risk compounds quietly in the dark. Stress is another silent amplifier. Going to bed while emotionally overwhelmed keeps stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline elevated. Instead of entering restorative sleep, the body remains in a low-level fight-or-flight state. Blood vessels constrict. Blood pressure stays higher than it should. The heart never fully relaxes. Over time, this pattern damages arterial walls and increases the likelihood of clot formation. A clot that forms overnight can block a coronary artery, causing a heart attack, or travel to the brain, leading to a stroke. Many victims are found having passed peacefully, but internally the body endured a sudden catastrophic event. There is also the issue of sleep apnea, which often goes unnoticed. Individuals who snore heavily or wake up gasping for air may be experiencing repeated oxygen deprivation throughout the night. Each pause in breathing forces the heart to work harder, jolting blood pressure upward repeatedly. This repeated stress can enlarge the heart, disrupt rhythm stability, and increase clot risk. When combined with poor nighttime habits like heavy meals, alcohol, or emotional distress, the cumulative burden becomes significant. Even posture can matter. Lying flat immediately after eating can increase reflux and vagus nerve stimulation, sometimes provoking irregular heartbeats in susceptible individuals. Add dehydration from caffeine or alcohol, and blood becomes more viscous, flowing less efficiently through already compromised vessels. For someone with underlying plaque, it doesn't take much for circulation to become critically obstructed. What makes this danger especially tragic is that it feels routine. It doesn't feel like climbing a mountain or running a marathon. It feels like scrolling on a phone, finishing a late dinner, having a few drinks to relax, or going to bed upset after an argument. The body, however, interprets these signals very differently. Beneath the surface, chemical shifts, pressure changes, and oxygen fluctuations create a cascade that can overwhelm a vulnerable cardiovascular system, particularly in middle-aged or older adults who may not even know they have developing heart disease. And when those risk factors quietly combine during the night, the consequences can unfold without warning or a chance to call for help. Another critical factor that turns an ordinary night into a medical emergency is the combination of dehydration and thickened blood flow during sleep. Throughout the day, your body loses fluids through breathing, perspiration, caffeine consumption, and physical activity. If you go to bed without properly rehydrating, especially after drinking alcohol or eating salty foods, your blood volume decreases while its viscosity increases. Thicker blood moves more slowly through the arteries, particularly if those arteries are already narrowed by plaque buildup. Sluggish circulation increases the likelihood of clot formation. When the body lies still for hours, circulation naturally slows further, and this creates an environment where even a small clot can grow large enough to block a coronary artery or travel toward the brain. Blood pressure patterns also change dramatically at night. In healthy individuals, blood pressure dips slightly during deep sleep, giving the cardiovascular system time to recover. However, in people with untreated hypertension or high stress levels, this dip may not occur properly. Some experience what physicians call non-dipping blood pressure, where pressure remains elevated throughout the night. Others experience sudden spikes triggered by stress hormones or breathing irregularities. These fluctuations place mechanical stress on arterial walls that may already be weakened or inflamed. Over time, small plaques inside arteries can rupture under pressure. When a plaque ruptures, the body attempts to seal it with a clot. That clot can rapidly obstruct blood flow, resulting in a heart attack or ischemic stroke. Inflammation is another hidden contributor. Late-night eating, particularly heavy meals rich in saturated fats and processed carbohydrates, temporarily increases inflammatory markers in the bloodstream. The digestive system demands increased blood supply, forcing the heart to pump harder. At the same time, insulin and glucose levels spike, which can impair endothelial function, the delicate lining inside blood vessels that helps regulate clotting and dilation. If someone already has insulin resistance or prediabetes, this effect becomes more pronounced. The combination of inflammation, reduced vessel flexibility, and thicker blood heightens the risk of vascular blockage during the quiet hours of rest. Irregular sleep cycles compound the danger. Staying awake late under bright screens suppresses melatonin production and disrupts circadian rhythms. This disruption alters heart rate variability and interferes with the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. Instead of shifting fully into restorative mode, the body remains partially stimulated. Elevated nighttime heart rate and reduced recovery capacity mean the heart never fully powers down. Over weeks and months, this chronic strain weakens the cardiovascular system and makes it more susceptible to sudden events. For individuals with undiagnosed arrhythmias, nighttime can be particularly risky. Certain rhythm disturbances become more likely when the body transitions between sleep stages. A vulnerable electrical pathway in the heart may misfire, leading to atrial fibrillation or more dangerous ventricular rhythms. When combined with dehydration, stress, or inflammation, the threshold for triggering a life-threatening rhythm becomes lower. Because the person is asleep, they may not recognize early warning sensations such as palpitations or dizziness. What makes this combination especially dangerous is that none of these factors alone may seem extreme. Mild dehydration, slightly elevated blood pressure, a heavy dinner, emotional stress, or poor sleep hygiene may each appear manageable on their own. But when layered together in the stillness of the night, they create a cascade of physiological stress that can overwhelm a heart already carrying silent vulnerabilities. And in that convergence of small overlooked habits, the risk quietly multiplies without visible warning signs. A third major element that increases the danger is unmanaged emotional stress carried into the night. Many people underestimate how deeply psychological strain affects the cardiovascular system. When you lie down still replaying arguments, financial worries, workplace pressure, or personal fears, your brain does not simply switch off because the lights are out. Stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline remain elevated, keeping the body in a heightened state of alertness. Heart rate stays slightly higher. Blood vessels remain partially constricted. Blood pressure does not settle into its normal restorative rhythm. This prolonged activation of the sympathetic nervous system gradually damages arterial walls and increases the likelihood of plaque instability. Over time, chronic stress also contributes to systemic inflammation. The inner lining of blood vessels, known as the endothelium, becomes less flexible and more prone to dysfunction. When the endothelium is impaired, arteries cannot dilate efficiently to accommodate changes in blood flow. This rigidity increases resistance within the circulatory system, forcing the heart to pump harder. If a person already has underlying atherosclerosis, even mild, the additional strain can destabilize plaque deposits. A rupture can occur silently, triggering rapid clot formation while the person is asleep and unaware. Emotional stress also disrupts normal breathing patterns during sleep. People who go to bed anxious are more likely to experience shallow breathing or micro-awakenings that fragment deep sleep stages. These disturbances prevent the body from entering sustained periods of restorative slow-wave sleep, which is when cardiovascular recovery is most effective. Without adequate deep sleep, heart rate variability decreases, meaning the heart becomes less adaptable to physiological changes. Reduced variability has been strongly associated with increased risk of arrhythmias and sudden cardiac events. Another factor tied to stress is nighttime rumination combined with late device use. Scrolling through distressing news, engaging in heated online discussions, or consuming stimulating content right before sleep prolongs cognitive arousal. Blue light exposure suppresses melatonin production, delaying the natural signal that prepares the cardiovascular system for rest. The body remains partially stimulated even after you close your eyes. This subtle stimulation can maintain elevated blood pressure and delay the shift into parasympathetic dominance, which is essential for heart recovery. Chronic emotional strain also influences blood chemistry. Elevated cortisol levels over extended periods contribute to insulin resistance, weight gain around the abdomen, and higher cholesterol levels. These metabolic shifts increase the formation of arterial plaque. While this process develops gradually, the consequences can appear suddenly. A person may feel generally stressed but functional, unaware that their vascular system has been progressively compromised. When stress peaks, perhaps after a particularly intense day, the combined physiological burden may exceed the heart's capacity to compensate. Sleep quality itself becomes fragmented under sustained stress. Frequent awakenings, vivid dreams, and light sleep reduce the body's ability to regulate blood pressure patterns overnight. Instead of a smooth dip, pressure may spike unpredictably. Each spike applies force against vulnerable arterial walls. If an individual has even a small clot forming, these pressure surges can dislodge it or cause it to expand rapidly. The tragic reality is that emotional strain feels intangible compared to physical illness. There is no visible wound, no obvious infection, yet the cardiovascular system responds to psychological stress as if facing a physical threat. Night after night of carrying unresolved tension into sleep creates an environment where inflammation, vascular stiffness, hormonal imbalance, and rhythm instability quietly converge. And when that convergence aligns with existing but silent heart vulnerabilities, the outcome can unfold in a single, irreversible moment during the stillness of the night. Another powerful and often overlooked contributor is undiagnosed sleep apnea and nighttime oxygen deprivation. Many people believe snoring is harmless or simply annoying, but loud, chronic snoring can be a warning sign of repeated airway collapse during sleep. In obstructive sleep apnea, the throat muscles relax excessively, blocking airflow for several seconds at a time. Oxygen levels in the blood drop. The brain senses the danger and briefly jolts the body awake to restore breathing, often without the person fully realizing it. This cycle can repeat dozens or even hundreds of times per night. Each pause in breathing creates a surge of stress inside the body. Oxygen deprivation forces the heart to pump harder to deliver what little oxygen is available to vital organs. At the same time, the nervous system releases bursts of adrenaline to stimulate breathing. Blood pressure spikes abruptly. Heart rhythm becomes unstable. These repeated surges act like mini stress tests occurring throughout the night. Over months and years, this relentless strain thickens the heart muscle, enlarges its chambers, and increases the risk of dangerous arrhythmias. Sleep apnea is strongly linked to atrial fibrillation, a rhythm disorder that allows blood to pool and clot inside the heart. If a clot forms and travels to the brain, it can cause an ischemic stroke without warning. The frightening part is that many individuals with sleep apnea are unaware they have it. They may wake up feeling tired, blame stress or aging, and continue the same routine. Meanwhile, their cardiovascular system is being repeatedly stressed in the background. Low nighttime oxygen also promotes inflammation and oxidative stress inside blood vessels. The inner lining of arteries becomes irritated and more prone to plaque formation. Over time, this accelerates atherosclerosis. Combined with other habits such as late heavy meals, alcohol use, or unmanaged hypertension, the cumulative burden becomes substantial. A person may appear relatively healthy during the day, but the repeated oxygen crashes at night create a hidden vulnerability that can suddenly surface. There is also a dangerous interaction between sleep apnea and obesity. Excess body weight, particularly around the neck and abdomen, increases airway collapse and raises baseline blood pressure. Fat tissue is metabolically active and produces inflammatory substances that further damage blood vessels. When oxygen levels dip during apnea episodes, the heart must work against both restricted airflow and elevated systemic resistance. This double strain magnifies the likelihood of nocturnal cardiac events. Certain sleep positions can worsen airway obstruction as well. Lying flat on the back allows the tongue and soft tissues to fall backward, narrowing the airway. In susceptible individuals, this position increases the frequency and duration of breathing pauses. Alcohol consumption before bed compounds the problem by relaxing throat muscles even more and suppressing the brain's responsiveness to falling oxygen levels. What might seem like a simple nightcap can significantly intensify oxygen deprivation cycles. Because these events happen during unconsciousness, there is no opportunity to recognize distress in real time. The person does not feel the oxygen dropping or the adrenaline surges, destabilizing heart rhythm. They simply sleep through repeated episodes of cardiovascular strain. If an arrhythmia becomes sustained or a clot forms during one of these oxygen crashes, the outcome can escalate rapidly, and in that silent sequence of interrupted breaths and surging pressure, the risk of heart attack or stroke increases dramatically without a clear warning sign to interrupt the progression. The final and often decisive factor is the cumulative effect of small, repeated nightly habits that slowly weaken the cardiovascular system over time. No single action may appear catastrophic on its own, but repetition is what turns vulnerability into crisis. Going to bed late night after night shortens total sleep duration and disrupts hormonal repair cycles. The heart depends on consistent deep sleep to regulate inflammation, stabilize blood pressure, and maintain balanced electrical signaling. When restorative sleep is chronically reduced, stress hormones remain elevated longer than they should, preventing full cardiovascular recovery. Chronic sleep deprivation alters glucose metabolism and increases insulin resistance. Elevated blood sugar damages blood vessel walls and accelerates plaque formation inside arteries. At the same time, poor sleep is linked to higher LDL cholesterol and triglyceride levels, both of which contribute to arterial narrowing. These changes may develop quietly over years, with no dramatic symptoms. A person may feel functional, busy, even productive, unaware that inside their arteries a gradual buildup is occurring. Sedentary evenings compound the problem. Sitting for long periods before bed slows circulation, especially in the lower extremities. Reduced movement can increase clotting tendency in susceptible individuals, particularly those with obesity, smoking history, or hormonal imbalances. If hydration is also inadequate, blood becomes more viscous, further encouraging clot formation. While the body is designed to handle short periods of stillness, chronic inactivity combined with other risk factors can create an environment where a clot forms more easily. Another overlooked contributor is ignoring early warning signs. Occasional chest tightness, shortness of breath on exertion, unusual fatigue, or brief heart palpitations are sometimes dismissed as stress or aging. These symptoms may represent minor but important signals of underlying coronary artery disease or rhythm instability. When such signs are repeatedly overlooked, the condition progresses without intervention. Medications, lifestyle adjustments, or medical evaluation that could have reduced risk are delayed. The first major event may then occur suddenly, often during sleep, when the body's compensatory mechanisms are less responsive. Chronic inflammation from smoking or exposure to air pollutants further weakens arterial integrity. Smoking in particular increases clotting tendency and reduces oxygen delivery, placing persistent strain on the heart. Even individuals who smoke earlier in the day carry the physiological effects into the night. Nicotine stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, elevating heart rate and blood pressure long after the cigarette is extinguished. Over time, the combined impact of vascular inflammation, plaque accumulation, and heightened clotting risk increases dramatically. Age also plays a significant role. As people grow older, arteries naturally stiffen and the heart muscle may thicken slightly. These changes reduce flexibility and reserve capacity. When layered with high blood pressure, metabolic imbalance, poor sleep, dehydration, and stress, the cardiovascular system operates closer to its threshold. It may tolerate daily demands, but the margin for error narrows. A single additional trigger, such as an unusually heavy meal, emotional shock, or dehydration episode, can push the system beyond that threshold during the quiet hours of the night. What makes this final keynote so important is the realization that risk is rarely created in one dramatic moment. It accumulates quietly through patterns repeated for months and years. Each late night, each ignored symptom, each unmanaged stressor contributes a small increment of strain. Eventually, the heart's resilience diminishes to the point where a nocturnal fluctuation in blood pressure, oxygen level, or rhythm becomes the tipping point, and in that accumulation of overlooked habits, the possibility of a sudden irreversible event steadily increases without obvious daily alarm signals. If there is one thing you take away from this, let it be this: sudden cardiac events during sleep rarely happen without layers of warning, built quietly over time. The body whispers long before it screams. Mild fatigue, occasional palpitations, restless nights, loud snoring, late heavy meals, unmanaged stress. These are not random inconveniences. They are signals. And when those signals are ignored repeatedly, the risk compounds in silence. The heart works for you every second of your life. It does not pause. It does not complain loudly at first, but it responds to how you treat it, especially in the hours when you believe you are resting safely. Your nighttime routine is not neutral. It either supports recovery or adds strain. This is not about fear, it is about awareness. Small adjustments, eating earlier, limiting alcohol, staying hydrated, managing stress before bed, addressing snoring or sleep apnea, monitoring blood pressure, taking unusual symptoms seriously can dramatically reduce risk. Prevention is rarely dramatic, but it is powerful. Do not normalize exhaustion. Do not dismiss chest discomfort. Do not assume that because something is common, it is harmless. If something feels off, get it checked. If stress is overwhelming, address it. If sleep is consistently poor, investigate why. Acting early is not overreacting. It is protecting your future. You deserve to wake up tomorrow and the next day, and many mornings after that. What you choose to change tonight may quietly protect the life you continue living for years to come.